So far we've learned how to graph when it's in vertex form. We've learned how to complete the square to make a standard form of a quadratic into a vertex form so we could graph it. Now we're going to learn how to graph when it's in factored form. Okay. At the beginning of this chapter, we talked about the three different forms of a quadratic function and what they're useful for. And so we're going to reiterate all those things in this one lesson. Okay, so here I gave this to you in factored form. So f of x equals x minus 3 times x plus 1. The first thing we're going to do here, the easiest thing to do at this point, let's see if we can get this to work. Nope, it doesn't want to work. Give me a second. Let me see if I can work this out. It's in tablet mode. Okay. So the first thing we do is find the x-intercepts. Can somebody tell me my x-intercepts? Oh, not right here, but here. In our first problem. Anyone know what the x-intercepts are? Yes. Let's try that again. 3 and -1. We have to change the signs. So it's 3 and 0. Thank you. And -1 and 0. Okay, make sure you change the signs. You take the original problem, you change the signs. Any questions? Okay, the next thing that we can find is the axis of symmetry. Let's start by graphing my intercepts. I'm at 3 and -1. Does anyone know how I'm going to find my axis of symmetry? Or what would my axis of symmetry be? One. And why is it at 1? Because it's in the middle. Okay, remember the axis of symmetry is the line that if I fold my parabola in half, it's exactly the same on both sides. Yes. Why did I do what? Oh, I don't know, because I can't count to guess today. This should be step 2, not step 3. So this is x equals 1. I'm trying to write down the steps so you remember what to do in the homework. Step 1, find the x-intercept. Step 2, find the axis of symmetry. Okay, remember the axis of symmetry is in the middle. You're going to ask yourself, in the middle of your x-intercepts. Okay. And it should be a question mark, not a dot, not a period. So once we find that, our next thing we're going to do is find the vertex. That's step 3. And remember that 1 from the axis of symmetry is your x value of your vertex. Now to find what the y value is, you're going to remember the A and our pattern of graphing. Remember your A value is the number right in front, your GCF, if you have it in factored form. So here, there's not a number there, so our A value is 1. That tells me a couple things. It tells me my parabola faces up. And if my parabola faces up, that means my vertex is a minimum. It's the lowest point on my graph. Then to graph this, I'm going to use my patterned rate of change, which is 1 over a, then 3 times a over 1, and then 5 times a over 1. I'm going to do this backwards. So instead of going from my vertex over 1 and up 1, over 3 up 3, over 5 up 1, I have to do it in reverse. And since I'm 2 away from the axis of symmetry, I just need the first 2. I'm going to use those first 2 steps to work backwards. So from here, I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3 and over 1. And on this side, I'm going to do the same thing, down 3 and over 1. Then I'm going to do the next step, which is down 1 and over 1. Down 1 and over 1. And now I'm on my axis of symmetry, so I have my vertex. And what would the y value there be? -4. So my vertex is 1 and -4. And then I can graph the rest of my parabola. And there's my parabola. Any questions over that? So for this, I'm going to work backwards. Okay, the next thing I'm going to find, number 4, is my y-intercept. And I can just look at my graph on this one. Can someone raise their hand and tell me where I find my y-intercept? Very good. It crosses the y-axis, which is this vertical line. It's 0 for x and it's at -3 for y. Any questions over that? Then we can describe the transformations. We can see the transformations from the vertex. My vertex, I said, was 1 and -4. So the 1 is the x value, and my x moves left and right. So I move to the right 1. And then the -4 is my y value, so that shifts it up and down. And since it's negative, I went down 4. Any questions over that? Also, I need to look at the a value. The a value in this case is 1. Okay, so there is no stretching and no shrink here, because the a was 1. Remember, if the a was 2, that would be a stretch because it's greater than 1. If a was a fraction, like 1/2 or 1/3, then that would be a shrink. Any questions over that? Yes. Okay, next one. So again, we're going to start with our axis of symmetry. Or not axis of symmetry, our x-intercepts before we can find the axis of symmetry. Let's call on somebody. Michelle, what are my x-intercepts here? 1 and 5. Again, make sure you're changing the signs. Any questions over that? So I'm going to graph those. I'm going to go where x is 1 and y is 0. I'm going to go where x is 5 and y is 0. Those are my x. Then from there, we're going to go to our axis of symmetry. Trevor, can you tell me my axis of symmetry? 3. 3 is in the middle, right in between the 2 and the 5, or the 1 and the 5. So then my third step would be my vertex. So that 3 is the x value. Okay, we still need to work about our a value to find the y of our vertex. Our a value here is 2. That is still a positive value, so our parabola still faces up. So we have a minimum for our vertex. Any questions over that? Yes.
When you're trying to find the middle, do you always have to find the middle of x, or can it be y too? You know, like for the y-intercept, do you have to find the middle of it too? Or?
Always for the x-intercepts. Always find the middle. The axis of symmetry will give you the middle. Okay. The axis of symmetry is the middle. Okay, so we still are going to use now our pattern rate of change. Because it's our a value is 2, it's going to be 2 over 1, then 3 times 2 over 1, then 5 times 2 over 1. Our pattern rate of change. Again, I'm 2 away, so I need to use those first 2 steps. The 2 over 1 and the 6 over 1, 3 times 2. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and over 1. And the same thing here, go down 6 and over 1. Again, I'm working my way backwards. Then my next one is I'm going to go down 2 and over 1, down 2 and over 1, until I hit my axis of symmetry. Now, if I don't hit the axis of symmetry, I've done something wrong, go back and fix it. So my vertex is at 3 and then -8 for the y value. And I can graph that parabola by connecting all these dots. Now step 4 is the y-intercepts. Can I see the y-intercept right now? Is it crossing the y-axis at all? Not yet. Any ideas on how I could find that? Yes, I can do my next rate of change, which would be the 5 times 2 over 1. So from my x-intercept, I can go over 1 and then up 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that will give me my y-intercept. My x value is 0 and my y value is 10. Any questions over that? There we go. Sorry, guys. Okay, then my vertex will help me transform this, figure out the transformations. Brianna, what does the 3 tell me? Right 3. Esteban, what does the negative 8 tell me? Down 8. And then our A value is 2. Harrison, can you tell me what the 2 means? The vertex will tell me right and left, up and down. What does the A value tell me? It will give me, well, no, that won't give me the axis. The 2 will help me find it, but yep. Stretch or shrinking. If I'm stretching my problem, making it thinner, or if I'm shrinking it down and making it wider. Do you remember what the 2 does? No? Anyone want to help him out? Yeah. It's a stretch. The 2 is greater than 1, so this is a stretch. If it was like 1/2, then that would be a shrink. Any questions over that? Okay. Yes. I used the next pattern, rate of change, the 5/2. So from my x-intercept, I went over 1 and up 10. Because that's where it would show where I'm crossing the y-axis. Any other questions? Okay, next one. Okay, put a little star, highlight this one because this one's a little different in a couple different ways. Okay, so step 1 again is to find the x-intercepts. Haley, C, what's one of my x-intercepts? Close? -3, 0. Remember, I have to change the sign. Does someone know the other one? Yeah? It's not 1. 0. Because I have this right here is kind of like this. -1 times x plus 0, and then x plus 3. Since I have that x by itself, it's got an x-intercept at 0. Any questions over that? So I'm going to go at 0, 0, and then -3 and 0. Step 2, axis of symmetry. Where is my axis of symmetry going to be? What is it? -1.5. Yes. Which is what makes this thing fun. So my axis of symmetry is x equals -1.5. So that is still my x value of my vertex. But it makes finding the y a little harder. Okay, I still have my a value here. My a value is the -1. That helps me because it tells me my parabola is facing down. Therefore, my vertex is a maximum. I can't use my a values in this case. Down 1, over 1, down 3 over 1, because I'm not going 2 full steps. I'm going a step and a half. So I can't go a half a step when I'm using my pattern rate of change. So I cannot do what I've been doing. So the only other thing is to plug this in. Negative 1.5 for x and find y. So I'm going to take my equation, f of x, oh, not f of x. Well, I guess I'll write it here. My f of x equals negative x times x plus 3. I'm going to say x equals negative 1.5. So I'm going to plug that in. So I'm going to have f times negative 1.5 equals negative 1 times negative 1.5 times negative 1.5 plus 3. I just substituted in negative 1.5 for all the x's. Any questions over that? Yes. I did replace that. So this x became negative 1.5. This x was this one. And this negative in front is the negative 1. Okay, I'm going to sit down. We're going to just work this out. So I'm going to do this part first. I'm going to have negative 1 times negative 1.5. Negative 1.5 plus 3 is just 1.5, right? 3 minus 1.5 is 1.5. And I have f of negative 1.5 equals. Then I'm going to multiply those two together. I'm going to get f of negative 1.5 equals negative 1 times negative 1.5 is a positive 1.5. So I'm going to have f of negative 1.5 equals 1.5 times 1.5? 2.25. Okay, use a calculator if you don't know. Okay, so that is my y value. Would I've ever been able to figure that out if I was trying to graph it? Okay, if I was trying to use that a value, how would I know it was 2.25 or 2.5? So it's kind of like the only way to do this one is to plug it in like we did. So I'm going to graph my vertex at negative 1.5 and 2.25. And this will show my parabola now. And it does face down like it's supposed to. So I've done that right. Any questions over that? We still need the y-intercept. So do we have the y-intercept? Very good. It crosses the y-axis, the same place it crosses the x-axis at 0, 0. So that would be my fourth step. My third step. Then we need our transformations. My vertex is negative 1.5 and 2.25. So this tells me it moved to the left 1.5. And the 2.25 is up 2.25. Now my a value was negative 1. Does anybody remember what negative 1 means as the a value? Raise our hands. Yeah. Not a shrink, fractions shrink. Reflection, reflects across the x-axis. You guys knew that, right? We already talked about it facing down, right? So it reflects across the x-axis when it's negative. Any questions over that? Okay. Now we're moving it on. Actually, I want you guys to write down in your own words how we found all these things. So you're going to have to go home and do your homework. So write down how you're going to find the axis of symmetry. Write down how you're going to find the vertex. Write down how you're going to find the y-intercepts. Write down how you're going to find the x-intercepts. In your own words. Explain what we just did for all of those. Okay, now we're given the function in standard form. And we're going to factor it to get it into x-intercept form or factored form. So I can identify those x-intercepts first. You could also rewrite this in vertex form by completing the square if you'd like, and that'll work too, and you'll be able to find all of this. Okay? I'm just going to review factoring with you right now. So the first thing we're going to do here is factor. So my x squared goes here, my 8x goes here, and my 15 goes here. Then we find the length of the sides. What multiplies to x squared is x and x. And then what multiplies to 15? 5 and 3. Okay, multiply to find this area. 5 times x is 5x. Then x times 3 is 3x. If I add them, do I get 8? Yes, super easy, good easy factoring right now. So to write this in factored form, I now have f of x equals x plus 5 and x plus 3. It doesn't matter if you write it in a different order, it's the same thing. So now, we're going to identify all those good things. We want to start with the x-intercepts. So that gives me -5 and then -3 and 0. So I have -3, -5. Sabrina, what's my axis of symmetry? What'd you say? -4, yes. In the middle, in between 5 and 3 is -4. So we move on to my vertex. My vertex has an x value of -4. If I go back to my factored form, I can again see that my a value is just 1. So my parabola faces up. That means my vertex is a minimum. It's the lowest point on my graph. And I can use a over 1 and then 3a over 1. Since I'm 1 away, I just need that first step. That's where I'm going to start. So I just go down 1 and over 1. And I'm on my vertex. Or on my axis of symmetry to get the vertex. Down 1 and over 1. Any questions? So my vertex is at -4 and -1 for my y value. And then there's my parabola. Step 4 is my y-intercept. Can I see my y-intercept? It's going to be kind of a pain to try and find this because I'm going to have to go up 6 or up 3. Then I'm going to have to go up 5. And then I'm actually have to go up 7. And it's not going to be on my graph. Do you remember how I can find the y-intercept, though, if I'm given it in standard form? Remember way back to 3.1 and 3.2. In standard form, I can identify the y-intercept. It's the constant. This right here is the y-intercept. Always. Because if I plug in 0 for x here, right, because x value is 0 for the y. If I plug in 0, I have 0 squared plus 8 times 0 is 0 plus 15 is 15. So that's my y-intercept. So it's 0 and 15. Any questions over that? Then I can do my transformations. My vertex was at -4 and -1. So that is left 4, down 1. And my a value was 1. So nothing changed. It wasn't stretched or shrank, or it didn't reflect at all because it wasn't negative. So we don't need to change anything for that. Any questions? Okay, next one. This one we need to start with the GCF. In class, what can they all be divided by? 2. So my GCF is 2. So I'm going to get x squared. -4 divided by 2 is -2x. And 2 divided by 2 is +1. So I'm going to have f of x equals, I know I have a 2 in front, and now I need to see what my other parentheses will be. So I'm going to factor it here. So I have x times x, and this is 1 and 1. And this is 1 times x is 1x. X times 1 is 1x. Okay, I'm still adding. I know I'm adding, so both of these have to have the same sign. So it has to be a negative and a negative. Is -1 and -1 -2? Yes. Okay, so make sure you make these negative. So this is going to give me x minus 1 and x minus 1 here. So I can write it out like this, or I could write it like this. F of x equals 2 times x minus 1 squared, since there's two of them. Any questions over that? Okay. Okay, from there, we can graph this. I have my x-intercepts at 1 and 0. And they're both 1 and 0. So it's just 1 and 0. There's only one x-intercept. That also means then that my axis of symmetry has to go right through that point. So my axis of symmetry is also at x equals 1. If there's only one x-intercept, then the axis of symmetry will go through that x-intercept. That also means my vertex is the same thing. 1 and 0. My A value, though, is 2. So from here, I have to go over 1 and up 2, over 1 and up 2. Then over 1 and up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Over 1 and up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I can see my y-intercept very easily. 0 and 2, right here. And then my transformations. I went to the right one, and I didn't go up or down any. My A value is 2, so that's a stretch. Any questions over that? Okay.